Hello there, and welcome to the CP7 podcast. My name's Parm,
And I'm Andy.
and together we are Chrono Passion 7. So, to start with, we're going into a wristwatch check. Andy, what have you got on the wrist then?
So today I'm rocking a rather special watch. I'm wearing a Zenith Mono Pusher, which is over 100 years old. It's definitely a piece what's stolen my heart. It's got an incredible enamel dial with beautifully blued hands and Breguet numerals. It's powered by a Valjoux 13 movement. Yeah, it's just an incredible piece. I wore it actually at the LV event, so some of the listeners maybe remember we mentioned that on the previous podcast. If you didn't hear that podcast, make sure to check it out. That was episode 3. And yeah, it got a lot of attention there. A lot of people were coming up to me asking me about the watch. They were really curious, especially once I found out the age, just the amount of respect. You know, one of the guys came up to me who was wearing beautiful Vacheron overseas, real heavy hitter, and he was just like, yeah, but this is a bit large. It's okay, but that's a proper watch. That's got real history. That's got heritage. That's like really special. And yeah, you know, you can't help but enjoy those little moments when that happens. But I'm really enjoying this piece. It's really great fun. But that's enough about me. What are you rocking, Pam?
Well, I think Andy was being quite humble there. He wore that watch to the Jacob event we went to at Geneva Watch Days, kind of stole the show at the watchmaker part of the session we had. So yeah, it's quite stunning. Wherever we go, it seems to catch a lot of attention, which is a sign of an incredible watch. So I'm wearing the complete opposite of what Andy's wearing. I've gone digital. I'm wearing a Casio G-Shock GA2100, which is commonly known as the Casio due to its similarity in looks to the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. I'd say more to the offshore because it's quite a big beast on the wrist. It's a 45 millimeter diameter, 48 millimeter lug to lug, and 11.8 millimeters in height. So it's a big watch. My sweet spot's normally about 39 to 41 millimeters, and this is in diameter, and this is 45. But it sits so well. It's safe to wear around London. It's light but durable, and it's very stylish. And a little fact that I'm not sure everyone knows about, this is the 40th anniversary of the G-Shock. The first one was created in 1983 by a Japanese engineer called Kikuei Ibe, who was given a pocket watch by his father, which he dropped and broke. This upset him so much that he had to make the unbreakable watch, and the result of that was the G-Shock, G standing for gravity shock. And he used the triple 10 theory to make these, which is 10 bar water resistant. It has a 10-year battery life, and if dropped from 10 meters, the impact should not break the watch. So it's a durable old thing, and that's what I'm wearing today. And if you want to see the watches we're wearing, please check us out on Instagram. Our Instagram is at chrono_passion_7, the number 7, where you can see the watches we're wearing today and also all of the watches we talk about during this show. It might be a show longer than usual today, so I'd strongly recommend hopping over to Instagram and having a look at what we're talking about to get the visual experience. So, Andy, what are we talking about today then?
So today is quite a special show. We wanted to let you, our loyal listeners, get a better feel for who we are and what we're all about. So first, we want to share a bit of an introduction, what first sparked our curiosity into watches. And then we've broken it down into 3 stages. Not that there's a set rule of 3 stages. So we're going to do the introduction, then we're going to go more into our first commitment watch, the first real purchase, what hurt a little bit, and then our first taste of luxury watches and how that spiraled to where we are today. But we hope you're going to enjoy our journey as much as we did. So before we actually get into the start of the show, there's a new segment we just wanted to add, and we want to do some shout outs to some loyal listeners. And one of the first shout outs is to a loyal listener and a good friend of ours, Mark Bowman. And we just want to say a big thank you for your support, your continued feedback. We always appreciate it. And I just want to shout out a great watch what Mark's looking at getting next. And Parm, I want to hear your opinion on this, but he's been trying on the Zenith El Primero, the A384, the 400 variant, which is the cappuccino dial. I think it's a great choice. It is looking to buy it for a rather special occasion next year. But what do you think to that piece, Pam? You think it's a good one?
I think that's a lovely watch. I remember looking at the A384, the Panda version they did. It's got very cool, sleek 1960s vibes to it. Is he getting it on the bracelet or the strap? I'm not sure, because they do a Gay Frere ladder bracelet, which is superb, perfectly vintage looking, and a beautiful watch which adds to the appeal and the aesthetic. I'd say that's a brilliant choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, to confirm on the ladder bracelet, it's a must. So today they only had it on the strap, but luckily they had a different reference on the ladder bracelet, so we could at least get a feel for that. But good shout, Mark.
And my first shout out goes to Timepiece Bob on Instagram, who has supported us from the beginning and left a lovely bit of feedback on the Apple Podcasts platform, giving us some real support, telling us what he liked about the show. So thanks a lot for that, Timepiece Bob. That's great to hear.
And my final shout out of today is a good friend of mine, Otman, who's fortunate enough to live in the Canary Islands. So he lives on the islands of the eternal sun. And just want to say a big thank you. He's been supporting the shows a lot. He's been sharing and giving us a good shout out across his socials. So just thank you for your continued support. We really appreciate it.
And luckily we have 4, so I get to go again. My final shout out goes to Harry's Horology, who, like Timepiece Bob, given us encouragement, feedback, and he's always been there to support us. So thanks again, and thanks a lot, Harry. We appreciate your support, and with the feedback you've given, we'll try and incorporate some of the ideas. So thank you again for that. And by the way, Andy, have you seen Harry on Instagram?
I have, yeah. I think he's going to be our new security, right? Head of security.
Yeah, he looked quite hard. Yeah, we're going to make him head of security detail if we ever make it to any place. If we ever make it.
So, Parm, over to you. Let's get into the main topic. And yeah, what started it all for you? What even got you into this hobby in the first place?
Well, it'd be a long show to explain all of that. My first memory of liking watches and being impressed by watches was my father. He always used to be very well dressed, very well turned out. For most gentlemen of his generation, very smartly dressed. Always had to wear a nice jacket, a nice watch, a nice pair of shoes, and a nice belt. And a nice wallet. That's what he always said. You look good in public if you're wearing those things. And he never had fancy watches. He didn't have anything flashy. He had a Seiko. It was a blue dial, I remember, but in those days, Seiko was big. This was during the quartz crisis, and Seiko were the watches to have. And it was a really cool blue piece. And I remember he put it on is it a Milan bracelet? The stretchy metal ones. He put it on one of those. So he was changing straps back in the day, before we even knew what that was. And that caught my eye first. And I thought, well, okay, it's grown up if you wear a nice watch. And I think nowadays people are thinking you're an old man if you wear a nice watch. But back in those days, it was you aspire to be a grown-up, wearing something nice like that. Also, obviously, James Bond, the Rolex Submariner, that was the icon when I was growing up. Plus, there was a few movies, but not as iconic as the James Bond watch. For me, that was it. How about yourself?
So very similar to you, Palm. Actually, my inspiration, what got me into watches was also my father, and it was an Accurus, which was actually my granddad's watch before my dad had that piece. And I just remember him winding that up on the morning, before going to school. He was just it was like a ritual. Every morning I'd see him holding it to his ear, winding it up. And yeah, it just always looked proper. It just caught my attention, and yeah, that definitely triggered my curiosity into watches. It's something what always stuck. I remember it to this day. I actually told my dad about this, and he's like, "Really? You remember that?" Which is nice. And just to go full circle, actually, I have that piece with me here today. My dad came to visit recently in Barcelona, and he brought me the piece because he didn't know much about watches. So he wore the hell out of his watch until it stopped working. And then in his mind, he thought when a watch stops working, that's it, it's kaput. You need a new watch. So it went in the drawer. So I'm curious to how many watches my parents have in drawers. But I said, no, absolutely not. It can be serviced and we get it up and running again. So I'm excited to get back going again. I'm actually going to enjoy wearing it a little bit. And then, of course, when I next see my dad, he'd be rocking that again, which is awesome. It's what it's all about for me. But yeah, they're my first memories, and that's what really started my curiosity, I would say. Yeah.
Excellent. So let's move into stage 1 of the 3 stages we've put together. And Andy, for you, stage 1 represents a surprising choice. Do you want to fill us in?
Yeah, is there shame to this? I don't think there should be, because we all have to start somewhere, right? Just to give you my background a bit, when I was living in the UK, I was a struggling musician. So I was touring around the UK trying to make it in a band back in those days, doing a bit of session guitar as well. And then, I needed some money. So I always liked luxury. I was always attracted to that world. So I had a relatively fun job in, luxury goods. And yeah, I started to make a little bit more money for myself, and I thought I'd treat myself. And I think it was Beaverbrook, if I remember correctly, where I went. And yeah, I had an option of 2 watches actually. So at the time, I was looking at an Armani. Yes, sorry, I know, fashion watch, an Armani quartz. And then also a friend at work offered me his Tag Formula One. So I was torn between the two watches, but I was just attracted to that new watch experience. The new watch experience was what attracted me. So I went for the Armani, and you know what? I loved it. I wore the hell out of it. And then similar to my dad, when it stopped working, I put it in a drawer because I didn't know anything then as well. So I'm as guilty as my dad with that method. Luckily, I've learned a bit since. But yeah, that was my first real commitment. I think it was around £350 back then. And to me at the time, that was a lot of money. And I have no regret. It was, it started this journey. So, but yeah, what about yourself, Pam?
Yeah, so there's no shame in that, Andy, although I do judge you slightly for getting a fashion watch. But and actually talking about it in public. But my if we're going right back, my first watch was a Star Wars digital watch when I was a kid because I was a big fan of the franchise. Well, still am actually, but it was the thing to have as a kid, as a young child in the this is late 70s. I'm going, yeah. So 78, I think Star Wars came out in 77. The watch I bought was 78, 79, is a couple of years after it came out. And I remember the box had a couple of the characters, C3PO, R2D2 on it, and the actual watch had Darth Vader, which is the most iconic villain in cinema, pretty much. And you had to press a button to bring up this LED, this red LED, which would tell you the time. And it was the best thing ever. I was like, wow, this is just so cool. And obviously, that as a kid, that's what I had. As I got older, the swatch phenomenon started. I had a see-through. There was one called the Jellyfish. It wasn't that. It was a blue version of that. But I can't find the name. I looked everywhere to see what reference that was. But it was one of those. Then the first serious watch I got was a Tag Heuer Formula One, which I've mentioned previously in our first episode. Check that out if you want to. And it was like, wow, this isn't a fashion watch. I'm not putting down fashion watches. I'd had a Fila watch, that sports brand Fila before that. It was all red, really. I was thinking that's really cool. Then I was reading a magazine, GQ. Again, like I said enough in the first show, the influencers back then were these fashion magazines, because I was always into that kind of thing at that age. And they said, they told you what you want is one of these. You need the Tag Heuer Formula One. It's the coolest watch. It's what all the cool people are wearing. It was a blue plastic one, rotating bezel. I had no idea what that did back then. It was just, oh look, it's a tag, and that was it. That's all I knew about it. Caused a bit of a stir amongst some people. They liked it. Some people didn't. But I was quite happy with having that. And I'm quite happy talking about this today as well. That was my first proper watch, because those were quite a big deal back then. Tag has unfortunately not really hit the heights they could have, because at that period they were so popular in like everything in sports. They were official timers for sports on television and sporting events. But that watch for me represented my beginnings. That was my stage one.
Really cool. So it's quite interesting that both of us could have both had obviously yours was the Formula One. That was your first piece, or more serious piece, if you like. But for me, it was almost the same. And as another part of the story, actually, my friend who I was buying the Formula One from, he was actually selling it to then get the Amiga Seamaster. I think it was the World Is Not Enough. So he was going for, the classic James Bond Amiga. So yeah, kind of an interesting story, right? How it goes. But yeah, unfortunately, I fell victim to the fashion watch. Yeah.
That's interesting you mentioned the Seamaster, because that actually nicely leads me into my stage two. This is the luxury stage. This is when you actually got a proper watch. I was going to get, again, this was James Bond influence. Everyone was buying the Seamaster 300 Pro. There was a quartz version out, and there was also a mechanical version. The quartz was out first, of course. And that was the watch I was going to get. I was going to get the blue one. I think they only had the blue one back then anyway. I remember speaking to my boss at the time, who actually had one. And then it was the same day I was going to go to the shop to get it. And I spoke to someone else in my team at work at that time, and they had one. And then there was someone sitting on the other side of the room, and they had one. And I thought, I've never been one to do what everyone else does. Plus, I don't want to be the fourth one at least. I mean, God knows who else had one in that room. So I just thought, no, I can't get that. But I liked Omega. I thought the brand is good. So I went to the shop. It was a goldsmith's actually in town. I had a look at the Seamaster, and I was like convinced, no, I don't want this, because I will just be another number. So I'm going to go for something else. And then they showed me the Speedmaster. So I was like, okay. I mean, I didn't have the level of knowledge that I have now about watches, and the Speedmaster going to the moon didn't mean anything to me. It was like, okay, that's nice. The salesperson said this watch has been to the moon, and in my mind, it was like, yeah, okay, but that hasn't really been to the moon, has it? That particular one in your hand. So I just thought, okay, that sounded like a gimmick to me. Now, Speedmaster, amazing watch, moon watch, absolutely amazing, beautiful watch. Great story. I wasn't just sold on it back then. So they showed me some other watches, and I ended up getting drawn to the Speedmaster Day Date, it was called. It's called the Triple Date now, which had the day, the date, and the month, which is a lot of stuff, a lot going on, and it was a lot of value for money at that time. I was thinking, right, I need this wearing it to work. I want an Omega, and I'll try this watch on. And the size, I think it was a 39 or 40, it was 40 mil, actually. Yeah. So the size was spot on as well. And the dimensions, everything about it was so cool. It was a very busy dial, which was a lot of the feedback I got. But I was like, okay, it's got a stopwatch in it. It's because it was a chronograph. It's got the day, the date, and the month. I mean, that's a lot of bang for buck there. And I thought I was sold on it, and I thought, right, okay. So I went away and I found this newish kind of website called Watchfinder. Back in the day, this is 2007, 2008, I think. This is way before the days of Andrew Morgan and his famous hands. This was where they would source new watches. The pre-owned side of Watchfinder didn't exist back then, to the best of my recollection. So I ordered it. It took months for it to arrive, but then I got that. I loved it. I kept it for years. It was hard for me to part with it, which unfortunately I have had to put money towards a different watch. But that was my first proper luxury watch, and it was one that I wore on my wedding day. I wore it everywhere. It went everywhere with me, that watch. So that was my stage two. Andy, I believe your stage two is going to up the game. The bar's set quite low at the moment for you.
Yeah. I'll try redeem myself. I don't know if I'll redeem myself that much. Yeah, so before I get into mine, definitely one thing I'll say, Parm, is something I can tell about you. And I know you now, right? Of course. But I think our listeners as well, just, you're a man who looks for value. You look for the best features, the most, what the watch is really going to give you for what you're paying. So my story is a little different. So kind of after the Armani, it was a bit of a grey period because, again, struggling musician, I kind of didn't do anything for some time, to be honest. I was just doing what I do with watches now, but in the world of guitars. And then it took a while for me to come back to the watch world. Actually, once I moved to Barcelona and settled into a bit more of a corporate kind of job where I had the ability to get into luxury watches. And yeah, I definitely fell into the YouTube world. Just, it was 2019, so quite later in life. I would just remember watching videos and, producer Michael, channels like this, just seeing this luxury lifestyle. And I want a taste of that. I want some luxury again. Yeah, I discovered Chrono 24, and you do the classic thing when you're novice on Chrono 24, you set your budget. And then you kind of sort low to high, right? You're looking for, you don't realize that the less you pay, maybe the worse of the watch actually could be. You're just looking for a bit of a bargain. So I learned a valuable lesson through this, but I saw Jaeger LeCoultre, so GLC, Memo Vox, and I think everybody listening now be like, okay, fair play. And I liked it. It was gold. I think it was gold plated, not gold rolled, which was a bit more preferred back then. And it arrived. And it was tiny. It was 33 millimeters. Now, I had no clue to check for millimeters. Why would I? I was a complete novice. I didn't know to even look at that detail. I just thought the watch looked cool, and it was listed as a men's watch. So, I was like, screw it. I'm going to rock this. This is kind of cool. And me later in life now, later in my journey, would probably rock it even more so because I make my rules now. I've got hence our slogan, right? I've got the confidence to do that, and I don't care. But at that stage, I was more influenced by the online community a little bit, and it was kind of shamed upon to wear anything smaller than a 36. I think maybe Pam, you'd agree in that world. So yeah, just had to move it on. It just didn't feel right. And the worst thing, the biggest insult for me was I showed it to my father-in-law, right? And he he saw it and he's like, "It's very beautiful. It's very nice, but is this not a lady's watch?" And it was just like, "Oh no," he's got really small wrists. He's wearing something like a 34 anyway. So for him to say that, I'm like, okay, this has to go. I was a bit, holding my head down in shame once again. So I still need to redeem myself a little bit, but still, hey, it's a good brand, right? We can say that, the watchmaker's watchmaker. So there's a bit of credit there, a little kudos there, I believe.
Yep. definite redemption of sorts. But Andy, as a struggling musician, you could have got one of those yellow G-Shocks like Ed Sheeran. That sort of seems to fit the bill. They seem to be quite popular these days.
I'm gonna ask you, is that the 40th edition? Is that really what they're doing for the 40th anniversary? Like, I don't see anything else, right? Is that it?
I haven't seen any anniversary models. That's a good question. Let us know in the comments if there is a G-Shock 40th anniversary edition, because I haven't come across one. And please tell me it's not that Ed Sheeran yellow one, because I think there are no words. If you don't want to say anything good, don't say anything at all. That's what I was taught. So I think we'll stick to that. Right. So Stage 3. Stage 3 kind of started. Stage 3 is supposed to be today, where we are today. And my stage 3 kind of, a lot of people's current journey started in lockdown. I think the majority of my watch madness started in lockdown. Between that time, I had a Breitling Cult, Hamiltons, and various other watches. And I thought before that, pre-pandemic, a few years before the pandemic, I thought, right, I'm going to treat myself because I just got married. I just got a new job and we'd moved house. We'd bought a house and I had enough left to just treat myself. I thought I'd use my bonus to get myself something I'd wanted. And all the time before the age of 40, I'd always thought a Rolex is for older people. It's not for me. I just thought, there's a time to get it, and that wasn't the time. And I thought, right now, this is the time. So I bought myself a Datejust 2, the most under the radar Datejust you could buy, with an oyster bracelet and smooth bezel and white dial. So it was just the plainest watch you could get. I liked it for its simplicity, though, because the Datejust 2 was a bit of a chunky monkey, shall we say, a bit too. I don't think the dimensions of the Datejust 2 did a watch of that quality justice. I just couldn't get on with it, so I decided to have it, but I didn't love it. I had it, and I thought, this is my Rolex. This is my first Rolex. I'm now at that right age to wear a Rolex, and I just didn't love it. So in lockdown, I treated myself to a no-date Submariner, which I did love, again with that whole James Bond connection. And I found myself never wearing the Datejust ever. Even in lockdown, we're at home. I'd wear 3 watches a day because you weren't going anywhere, but you just have them on, wearing your watches at home. But the Datejust 2 never seemed to get any wrist time. So I ended up moving that on and trading that in for an Explorer 2 Black Dial, which is a really cool watch. And then that's been moved on towards another piece so that you can see the knock-on effect that these watches will have, what the craziness that was going on. I then had a bit of a Tudor phase as well, where I ended up with 3 Tudors, like in a short period of time. I mean, we all had more disposable income back then because we had no commute. We were going nowhere. We weren't going out. We weren't going on holiday. We weren't doing anything. And I thought, yeah, these Tudor watches are really nice. I really like them. I like the look of them. I like what they're doing. So I ended up buying a GMT, which was a really nice watch. And then I thought, there was a lot of hype around the Black Bay 58 at that time. And I thought, and it was the blue one that was really, making all the tongues wag, making everyone talk. And I bought one of the blue ones, and it is an amazing watch. I love that watch. 39mm again, the sweet spot. Nice vintage looking dive watch. And then I thought, okay, I've got the blue one, but the black one's really nice as well. It's got this really nice faux patina. It's got these vintage vibes. I might get one of those as well. So I ended up with this Black Bay 58 in 2 colors and the GMT. And I had to take stock, and I took a look at my collection. I thought, oh my God, I think every watch in my collection just looks the same now. So a lot of those got moved on towards other pieces, some similar looking, some completely different looking. And I have none of the Tudors left, and but I do have some other nice pieces that I've wanted, which did help contribute towards what I wanted. So at the moment, having moved on so many pieces, I have a lot of watches that I want now, which I'll go through in future shows. I won't talk about that here. This is just stage 3, where we are and how we got to where we are. And I've got to say, it was quite a journey. It wasn't flipping per se, but it was just moving towards this. I want this. Okay, I can put this and this towards this and this towards that. It was like a game. It was like a really crazy obsession, going on Chrono 24, going on grey market dealer websites, going on jewelers' websites, just because you couldn't go to the shop and get anything, so you just don't order it online. It was there. I mean, the Tudors were a bit harder to get, actually. But yeah, that's my stage 3. That's where I am today. What about yourself, Andy? Have you got a similar story to tell?
Definitely. So as I said previously, right, on with the Jaeger LaCucha, that was 2019, and just to, to finish on that story a little bit, how painful is this? Like, I'd only just got the watch. It needed a service, so I took it to be serviced, and then lockdown happened. So I was only just got it, even though it was a little small. I kind of liked it still, and I didn't even get to enjoy it or wear it for like maybe over a month until I could collect it and more. And yeah, I moved that on, and then I was like, okay, where do I begin? What should I be buying? What do I need in my collection? I don't know. I wasn't even building a collection in all honesty back then. I was just looking for that perfect watch, which probably does exist. Maybe I own it now and don't even realize it. That does happen sometimes. You know, sometimes you got to be with a watch a while until you realize that. However, the watch what jumped out to me, and similar, you know, with Parm, I was on Chrono 24 all the time during lockdown, listening to YouTube, listening to podcasts, reading countless articles as well. And Zenith jumped out at me. You know, I was like, okay, I'm always a fan of an underdog brand, and is Zenith an underdog brand? Maybe not so much these days, but maybe back then it was a little bit still. And I saw a nice open heart, and that impressed me at that stage in my journey. You know, seeing the movement, seeing everything what was going on, the skeletonization, and I went for it. I rocked it for a bit, and then I was like, maybe this is a bit goofy. Maybe it's not as cool as I think it is. Maybe I need something. It's just not doing it. It's not quite me. And I moved it on once again. And then in came Amiga. What can go wrong with an Amiga, you might ask? So, nothing really. It was an Amiga Seamaster 300 Professional. It was the Apenia edition. And it was, you know, I think it was worked in collaboration with Jack Mayall. And it had a Regretta timer. And it had 7 like circles going around the dial, and they would change it from silver to red dots. So you'd get 7 red dots, and then those 7 red dots would then turn back to silver, which would mean 14 minutes in total had passed, and that's the maximum amount of time a super professional free diver can basically hold their breath. So it was cool. It had an interesting story. I'm all about an interesting story with a watch, but just didn't do it for me. It was something about it. I wore it a lot. I felt something was missing. I felt I didn't have a piece, you know, maybe call it ignorance. I thought it was a piece what nobody would respect. And back then, again, I was in, because you're in lockdown, right? So you're in the live chats on, you know, live streams on YouTube, and yeah, you know, the drum of Rolex is always around you, and it's just, I thought, okay, I need a Rolex. If I want to be a proper watch guy, I want a real serious watch. It has to be Rolex, and it can't be an old date. Just it can't be, you know, it has to hurt. It has to hurt a little bit. And I went for I went for the Air King, and again, a bit of an underdog, you could argue. So it was the 116-900. So the one where, yes, the 5 is out of balance. I'm terrible with OCD, so I don't know why I got that. You know, it didn't balance perfectly on the dial, but you know what? I enjoyed it. It hurt to get it, and you know, I rocked it a lot. I thought it was a cool piece. I remember just looking into, you know, the inner bezel where, you know, modern Rolex, it just has that Rolex engraving going all the way around it, and I just like, this is a proper watch. This is a real luxury watch. It felt amazing. I'm not going to lie. It felt amazing to own a Rolex. I'm not going to lie in any way about it. That was my first. It was in, you know, it was a Safe Queen. It was fully stickered. So it was as close to getting a retail experience I could buying secondary. So that was quite amazing. However, the market turned into my favor, and come on, who's going to say no? A day date came up, an oyster quartz day date, you know, absolutely incredible. Me and Parm actually call it the Michael Caine. The reference is the 19018, you know, and it's all gold, like with, and it had Catalan days, which is cool living in Barcelona, right? And if you were to ask me what's my biggest regret moving a watch, because you're going to guess it, yes, that also got moved on. It was that one. It was a, I don't want to use any bad language, but it was awesome. It kicked ass. Why did I get rid of that watch? I don't know. Give me abuse in the comments, you know, but I ain't going to bring it back, unfortunately. But I loved that watch. I'm just talking about it now gives me a shiver of regret, in all honesty. Why did I move it, you may be asking? Because a Patek Philippe came available, and I needed to pay a tiny bit more money, but I managed to get a 5119R, the Calatrava, which is definitely my style, especially these days, like a cool dress watch, understated, the enamel dial. You know, the 215 movement inside a little bit small. I kind of wish in the 6119 they made that a little bit bigger rather than the movement they actually have in the 6119. I'm sorry. I just think it's beautiful. The old style bridges in the 215 is gorgeous, and if they just upscale that movement, I think it would look fantastic. If they just made it a little bit larger, you know, for modern times. But hey, that was a great piece. However, I just had the itch to try more watches, and I don't. You know, at the time, I didn't have an endless budget, and I still don't have an endless budget, not yet. Maybe one day we'll dream of that, you know, and we're all at different stages within our careers and life. And it just didn't financially make sense for me to put more money into watches, but I still wanted to try more watches. So that got liquidated into more watches. And, you know, that's where I am today. That's present day. You know, that went, and I've experienced countless other watches until where I am within my collection right now. And again, as Parm says, that'd be another show. But gosh, it's been a journey. Do I regret anything? Definitely, I think you can tell from my voice and looking at Parm's reaction there. Definitely, the day date is my biggest regret. Awesome watch, but you know, maybe it will come back to me. You tend to find these watches what you regret leaving tend to come back, and I think that's similar with Parm and the Submariner maybe. But yeah, watch this space on both of those pieces within our collections maybe.
Yes, watch this space. Indeed. It's interesting you mentioned regrets, because I don't, you know, I miss watches. I don't, the regrets maybe so not so much, but I do miss watches that I've owned. Like the one watch I miss is the Black Bay 58, the blue dial. Everyone loves the black, but I had a connection with that blue one. A lot of the watches I bought in lockdown were probably in the winter time. It's just when you literally had nothing to do. You couldn't go out anywhere. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't socialize. And I remember the first time I went out and the sun hitting that dial and the bezel and the way the blue, it's not a sunburst. It's very matte. There's nothing very flashy about it, but just that blue and the way it looked and the size of it on my wrist, it just looked perfect. And that's one watch that I miss. And whether I get another one, you never know, but you don't want too many. Again, similarity was the problem with my old collection. I don't want too many similar looking watches, but again, you never know. Another one I actually really liked was the Explorer 2, the Rolex Explorer 2 with the black dial. It was the old 216570 with the floating hands. Not the newer version, and it was something about it. I don't know what it was. It's that orange and black, the combination of orange and black. So the GMT hand was orange, and the Explorer 2, the actual detailing, the writing on there was orange. This was something very 1970s scientific about. I don't know what it was. There was something about it that took me back to watching old 1970s American TV shows, sci-fi, or even like these detective. There's something about it. There's something very 70s about that combination of colors, and that is one I do miss, because that was an excellent watch. Anyone who owns an Explorer 2, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Fortunately for me, that I moved it on towards something that I liked. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore, because we are not so fortunate enough to be able to just keep every watch I've ever owned. And to allow me to add to my collection, I need to move watches on. And those are probably the two I miss the most. And one mistake, I'd say, over regret, is the fact that I thought that the last watch I bought would be the last one I'd ever buy. And that's a complete mistake, because I've already got my eye on something else. And watch this space. There could be a new addition to Parm's collection. Check out Instagram. You might get a little hint. So there you go. I'll leave it at that. I won't go too much into detail on that.
Yeah, I think you said next year. I don't think you've got it in you to wait until next year. But you've been talking with me the last few days. I think it's coming very soon. But I'm excited. I always get, it's something about seeing somebody else get a watch and get so happy with it. It's almost you getting to live that experience through their eyes a little bit, without the pain of having to spend the money. So I'm looking forward for you getting that piece. Quite excited to see that. So just to round up the show then, and I think we've touched on it a little bit, but what keeps that fire going for watches? Like, what is it for you, Pam? What really draws you to just one more watch? Like you've just said, what is it? What is it about? You've got quite a nice established collection, right? We've both got cool watches. Why do we need another watch? What is it for you? What really makes you keeps that fire burning?
I actually figured it out. I didn't know for years. I actually thought, I don't know, I just want this one. This one looks good. This one, this one, and that's the thing, looks good. So it doesn't have to just look good now. It has to look good in my collection, and it has to, because I've always been into style and fashion. I've always tried to present myself well in public and try and look good. Even though everyone tells me I have the face for podcasting, but I do think the aesthetic of a watch is what is key now for me, and that's what is driving me at the current moment in time. The look of it has to fit what I want to, how I want to present myself in public. And it's not, oh, this is hot and you have to have that. No, it is, what do I like? What represents me? What is aesthetically pleasing to me? What has the right horological significance for me, for my collection, and also for me to wear? Because when you go out, you're wearing your watch, you're going out in public and just basically showing who you are in horological terms. And I think the aesthetics have definitely, not in a shallow way that, oh, it looks nice, but in a way that has to match the person. The right watch for the right person will look 10 times better than a really expensive watch for the wrong person. So I think I may have nailed it there. I don't know. You tell me.
I think so, yeah. I think you summarized it perfectly. So I don't think I need to add much more. So you've saved me a job. Thank you. But yeah, very similar. I think now I've matured, that's probably, now I've matured, I've had the regrets. At the time of moving watches, I didn't have the regret because I was still experienced. I still would taste in, the spice of life, right, within the watch world. And for me, it's just, I absolutely love watches. It just, every watch you put on, like, I maybe try a friend's lips or try some watch I've never even heard of before, what somebody has, and I put it on, I'm just like, that's got a vibe, that's cool. And I think that's what draws me back. Just, there's so many amazing watches out there, what we're still yet to discover. And just the beauty of these pieces, as you said, the aesthetics, like how cool they look, how they can represent you, how a particular mood, what you've got just by putting that watch or the outfit, what you're wearing, it's like the cherry on the cake, it's just, yeah, it's always that one more what you want to explore. And I don't think I'm ever going to lose it. I think it's got me good and I love it. I wouldn't want it any other way. But I think you summarised it pretty perfectly there as well.
I just want to add, I do draw the line at fashion watches. They don't count in what I just said.
Yeah, okay. No more Armani. I thought I could buy another Armani, but maybe next time. I've got a secret collection, really. Like 120 different Armanis.
It's been a great chat, Andy. What say you?
Yeah, it's been a really fun one, I think, and a bit of an eye-opener. A bit of self-discovery within this. I think I need to listen to this podcast back myself to figure out who I am in my journey as well, So really enjoyed this conversation. Absolutely fascinating to hear your story. And yeah, I hope our valued listeners feel the same. As always, a huge thank you for listening. If you've made it this far within the podcast to hear this message, thank you so much for listening all the way through. Make sure to check out our Instagram if you want to see all of the fascinating watches we've been discussing today. Gosh, am I going to put an Armani on Instagram? We're going to put most of the watches we discussed today. I maybe do you the decency of not putting the picture of Armani on there. I don't want to get, their account banned on Instagram. However, make sure to tune into our Instagram. It's chrono_passion_7, as in the number 7. We're always going to put our show notes on there. So every single reference we're talking about will be on there. In the near future, we've planned on making a group where real true listeners of the show, we're going to give you bloopers, insights, what we're up to, discuss topics. You're with us on this journey, and that'd be fantastic if we could ever do something like that. And yeah, that's all we've got time for today. Just before I close from my side, we are going to be doing a cool collaboration with the Loom Plotters podcast. So an absolute privilege. We're really excited to be doing that. So we're going to be doing a show with them over at their channel and then vice versa. So look out for that. That will be coming in the upcoming weeks. So watch your space. For now, that's goodbye from me.
And I believe that is us done for another day. That's the end of the show. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you, and you will hear us in the next one.